Picture two people, same city, same job, same paycheck. One of them, let's call her Sarah, spent her 20s buying the newest phone every year, upgrading her car and telling herself she'd start investing later. The other, her old college roommate Amy, put away just $100 a month starting at 22. Didn't touch it, didn't panic when the market crashed, didn't brag about it either. 35 years later, they meet again at a reunion. Sarah is still working. Amy just quietly retired. Same income, same lifestyle, more or less, but one number changed everything. And by the end of this video, you're going to understand exactly what that number is, why almost nobody talks about it honestly, and why $100 a month might be the most quietly powerful decision a person can make with their money.
This isn't going to be one of those videos that throws jargon at you and expects you to nod along. We're going to walk through this like two people talking over coffee. No spreadsheets flashing on screen for shock value. Just the truth, slowly unpacked, with real numbers. So by the time this ends, you'll actually know what to do with it.
Here's the first problem. $100 a month doesn't feel like anything. It's a couple of takeout dinners, a tank of gas, and a coffee habit. It's so small that our brains are almost wired to dismiss it. Psychologists call this temporal discounting. We're built to value what happens today way more than what happens in 30 years. Because for most of human history, 30 years from now didn't matter if you didn't survive this winter. Our brains never got the memo that the game changed. So when someone tells you just invest $100 a month, it sounds like something a personal finance influencer says to sell a course. It sounds too easy, too repetitive, too boring to actually matter. But that feeling, that boredom, is exactly the trap. Because wealth, real wealth, the kind that lets you walk away from a job you hate or retire before 60, has never been built on excitement. It's been built on repetition so quiet that most people give up before it starts working. Let me tell you about a man named Ronald Reed. He worked as a janitor and a gas station attendant in a small town in Vermont. He wore the same worn coat for years. He clipped coupons. Nobody who met him would have guessed anything unusual about his life. When he died in 2014 at the age of 92, his family discovered something that made national news. He had quietly accumulated $8 million. Not through lottery winnings, not through inheritance, through decades of small, boring, consistent investing in stocks, and simply never selling. Ronald Reed didn't have a finance degree. He didn't time the market. He didn't chase the next big stock everyone was talking about at parties. He did one unglamorous thing for a very long time. He kept putting money into investments and let time do what time does. That's the entire secret hiding behind this video's question. It isn't a trick, it isn't a hack, it's math. And math doesn't care how boring it feels while it's compounding in the background. Now, let's actually do the math, because vague promises don't help anyone. If you invest $100 every single month into something like a broad stock market index fund, the kind that simply tracks companies like Apple, Microsoft, Amazon, and hundreds of others together rather than betting on one, history shows an average annual return in the range of roughly 7 to 10% after adjusting for the ups and downs over long periods. Here's where it gets interesting. At a modest 7% average annual return, $100 a month for 10 years turns into roughly $17,000. Not dramatic yet, right? That's the part that makes people quit early. But leave it alone for 20 years and that same habit becomes around $52,000. 30 years and you're looking at approximately $122,000. And if you started at 25 and let it run until 65, 40 years, you'd be sitting on close to $264,000 from money that in total you only ever contributed $48,000 of yourself. You would have put in $48,000 of your own money over 4 decades. The rest, over $200,000, was created purely by time and compounding. Nobody handed that money to you. The market didn't gift it to you. It came from patience and from $100 a month that felt too small to matter every single time you set it aside. But here's the part almost nobody says out loud, and it's the part that actually determines whether this works for you or not. The first 10 years are going to feel like nothing is happening. You'll check your account, and the number will look almost embarrassingly small compared to the effort you're putting in. This is the exact point where most people give up. They see their friend post a picture of a new car, feel behind, panic sell, or simply stop contributing because it doesn't feel like it's working. This is called the flat part of the curve, and it is the single biggest reason ordinary people never build wealth, even when they technically knew how. Compounding isn't a straight line, it's closer to a hockey stick. Almost all of that $264,000 we talked about doesn't show up until the final 10 to 15 years. The growth in year 35 looks nothing like the growth in year 5, even though the habit itself never changed. If you quit in year 8 because it feels pointless, you never get to see the part where it actually explodes. Think about a snowball rolling down a long hill. At the top, it's tiny, and pushing it forward feels like it barely does anything. But somewhere down that hill, it starts picking up snow faster than you're pushing it. Eventually, it's rolling on its own, growing without your help. Most people quit while they're still standing at the top of the hill, wondering why their tiny snowball isn't already an avalanche. Let's talk about the moment that separates people who actually get rich from people who almost did. In 2008, the global financial system nearly collapsed. Stock markets around the world lost close to half their value in the span of about 18 months. People watched their retirement accounts get cut in half on paper, and millions of investors panicked and pulled their money out, locking in those losses forever. But the people who kept contributing their $100 a month through that crash, who kept buying shares while everyone else was selling in fear, ended up buying those shares at massive discounts. When the market recovered over the following years, and it always eventually has throughout history, those same investors weren't just back to even. They were significantly ahead because they'd accumulated more shares at lower prices during the panic. The people who stopped contributing out of fear missed the entire recovery. This single behavioral difference, staying calm during chaos, has separated more successful long-term investors from unsuccessful ones than any stock-picking skill ever has. Right now, in 2026, this conversation matters more than it ever has. Inflation has quietly eaten away at the value of cash sitting in savings accounts for years. Rent and everyday costs across the US, UK, and Australia have climbed faster than most people's paychecks. $100 a month feels tighter than it used to for a lot of people. And yet, this is precisely why starting now, even with a small amount, matters more than waiting for the right time or a bigger paycheck that may or may not arrive on schedule. The uncomfortable truth is that most people wait until they feel financially comfortable to start investing, and that day, for most of us, never quite arrives on its own. The people who build wealth aren't the ones who waited for a windfall. They're the ones who decided that $100, even when it hurt a little, was worth setting aside before it could be spent on something that wouldn't matter in 5 years. So go back to Sarah and Amy from the beginning of this video. The difference between them was never income. It was never intelligence, luck, or some secret stock tip. The difference was one decision, repeated quietly for decades without needing applause or recognition along the way. Amy didn't feel like a genius while she was doing it. Most months, she probably didn't think about it at all. That's the strange truth about building real wealth. It rarely feels significant while it's happening. If there's one thing worth carrying away from the next 20 seconds of silence before you close this video, it's this. The version of you 30 years from now is being shaped by the decision you make about that first $100 this month. Not next year, not when things feel easier, this month. Because the story of Ronald Reed, the janitor who quietly became a millionaire, was never really about how much he made. It was about how long he simply refused to stop. If this changed how you think about that $100 sitting in your account right now, you already know what to do with it next.